So on this week's discussion, we have Elles van Gelder. Elles came into most people's view during the World Press Photo Awards a couple of years ago with her joint piece called Afrikanerblood. Now, Afrikanerblood was an amazing video that really sort of blew a lot of people away in terms of her use of audio, photography and video. And today we're going to concentrate specifically on audio because Elles has a history, or a long history, as an audio journalist. Now, Elles, you have, as I've said, you have quite a long history of working in audio journalism, and I think, I'm not sure, but I think this was your first multimedia piece with Afrikanerblood. Now, we've known each other a little bit before that because you attended one of the World Press Photo workshops, but not as a participant. Maybe you can talk more about that later. But first, could you just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you and your history as a journalist, and what brought you to start this process of getting into multimedia journalism, and in fact, how Afrikanerblood came about?
So I've been based in South Africa now for 7 years, coming from the Netherlands originally. I'm based in Johannesburg, and when I started here, I started really like a traditional journalist. I was a writer and I worked as a radio journalist. I worked together a lot with a Dutch photographer, Elles van Gelder, and we traveled through Africa and we made these stories, me doing the text and she doing the photography. And with a lot of these projects, we kind of felt something was missing, and we were really looking for a different way to tell a story. And when we got in touch with this extreme right organization in South Africa that in the end led to the project Afrikanerblood, we were thinking that would be a great project to kind of try to tell this story differently, because we wanted to add value. We just thought in this story, text and photography wasn't enough. We wanted people to see it, to feel it, to hear it. So actually that project was a big experiment for us. We didn't tell anybody we were working on it because we weren't too sure as well if we would succeed in creating a good quality multimedia. I did the audio and the video, which I know is not very common for a writer to start taking video. But we really wanted Ylvi to focus on the stills, and I also just wanted to learn a different way to tell a story. It's a couple of years later now, and I actually do a lot of video work. I do a lot of documentaries, so it's really something that after that I kept on doing.
Great. And when you're approaching a story like this, what part does audio play? Now, obviously, you're saying you're concentrating on audio and video now, but in this particular discussion, we want to concentrate on audio, and I'm wondering how you go about planning for your audio before you start a production.
It plays a massive role. I think if you do a multimedia and your audio is not of a good quality, you can basically not use it. Even if your stills are brilliant, if your video are brilliant, you need to have good sounds. That sense, you really need to be conscious about that when you're in the field to get the audio as well. Because I think for a lot of stills photographers, it's you focus on the stills and then the audio kind of comes second. But you need to create a way that it actually comes as important. And it also means that you need to be conscious of the sounds that you maybe don't really hear. And with that I mean that, for example, if you'll be shooting at night, get the sound of crickets, and when you are somewhere where it's windy, get the sound of the wind. All these kind of elements will work very well in your multimedia. Of course, also get the sounds that's like footsteps, for example, something we did as well a lot in our multimedia. Those are really pronounced kind of sounds, but it's almost more the subconscious sounds that you also need in your multimedia. Regarding workflow, what we did is we recorded the interviews separately with a lapel mic, with a lav, just to get a really good quality on that. Then on the camera, I use a mic like this. This is the Rhodes, and you can get great kind of sound of the environment. And when you take the photo, have your radio recorder. I use an external recorder as well. I use the Marantz, but if I would choose a recorder now, I would probably go for the Zoom recorder. Have it in your pocket, take the still, and then hold your recorder next to it and take the sound as well.
So you've described a lot of sort of key elements in that particular production, but could you summarize what you think is core? What are the key elements that you're looking for when you go out to record audio for a specific production? I mean, do you start with kind of writing down sounds before you go out that you think that you're going to need, or is it something that you do as you go along?
Kind of do it as you go along, yeah. But be conscious about the diversity of sounds you want to get. Even if you, for example, shoot outside on the street, don't use the same street sounds for every street scene you have. But if you go to a different scene or a different setting, record the street sound there again, because every street has its own sound. And if you create that, you can kind of really feel a diversity in the sound. So basically, you just have the recorder in your pocket, get the shot, and then hopefully be able as well to still get the sound of the thing you're shooting or the scene you're seeing. In some instances, we were lucky with Afrikanerblood that some things were kind of repetitive. Like, for example, their morning rituals were the same. They had exercise that was the same every day. And in that sense, in the evening, we could actually go through our material and see like, wait, that happened then, and we probably want to use that in our story. Let's make sure that we, the next day, then get the audio on that as well. So we were lucky in a way that sometimes the days were quite repetitive, and we could get the sound even the next day still.
And in the credits at the end of Afrikanerblood, there are some additional people other than the two of you who seem to be involved in putting the sound together. Could you just tell us a little bit about how that process went from after you'd recorded it to the final production, and the decisions that were made and how the sound, because the sound is so rich in that production?
Well, basically what we first did, first of course I logged all the audio and kind of went through everything and gave it a name, say this is footsteps, this is the wind at that certain moment, etc., etc. And then we actually first focused on building the story in images, in the video and in the photos. And then from there, we kind of looked at the sounds we had for that. And yeah, I think it for me, it really helped coming from a radio background that I am used to building stories with just sound. And in that sense, we actually had a lot of material to work with. And we could actually fill in all the photography as well, either with sound that I took separately on the recorder, or with sound as well that came from the video. So sometimes we also use the sound from the video tracks then to put under the stills. There was somebody in the end that basically helped us just to blend in all the sounds during the editing. But that was just like an hour kind of technical job just to make sure it flowed nicely. But for the rest, it was all kind of things we picked up in the field that we use for the production.
Fantastic. Now, I know you come from a radio background, but for photojournalists, most of the people who will be watching this will be photojournalists moving into multimedia. What do you think for them are the key challenges in audio as they start this sort of new way of thinking about making stories?
Yeah, I think the key challenge will be, and that was of course why we were lucky as well to work on a team in this production, is if you do everything by yourself, I think it's very difficult sometimes to kind of get the shot you want, and then as well to think about, oh, I need to get audio. I think initially just start with getting the general sound of your environment, and that I mean always record 2 minutes of the room where you're in, where you're doing a shoot, or the street where you're at, where you're doing a shoot. Those 2 minutes will be very valuable, even if you have the feeling there is no sound around you, like in this room now. It does have a certain tone, it does has a certain sound. So always make sure, even if you kind of forget to get key sounds while you're shooting, after your shoot get 2 minutes of audio, and that you can always use as well to loop under your different images. And then if there are kind of pronounced sounds, let's say footsteps again, try to get that, because it will really kind of draw somebody that sees the multimedia into the story.
Thanks, Alice. Now, at the end of these discussions, we always like to ask somebody for a single tip. Now, if you were to bring all of your years' experience as an audio journalist together, and you were to offer one tip to a young photojournalist setting out in terms of the way that they collect their audio or they produce their audio, what would that tip be?
Always, well, I'm a bit messy in organizing my work. So if you have a big project, make sure that if you have the time, as you do with your photos, log your audio straight away, because a big project, you tend to forget what that one sound is that you took 2 weeks ago. So try to kind of log it and kind of put a description on the sound the same evening that you come back from the field. Another thing, when I started to do multimedia, I shoot on a DSLR. It's quite tricky because you've got this external audio device and then you record the audio on your photo camera. What for me was key, just something very technical that helped me a lot, was during your edit, that now you've got these brilliant programs, you dump your video in the program, you dump your audio in the program, and it actually links the audio and video automatically. So you don't need to do that on your timeline. There's one program called Pluralize and another program called Dualize, and that changed a lot for me because it made the workflow so much more easy. So that's definitely something to look into. To use those programs, actually it's good to use an old trick when you are recording. Before you start the recording, clap your hands so that the program can kind of pick up the peak where it needs to sync your video and your audio.
Alice, thank you very much. It's interesting to hear you talking about recording crickets, sitting here in a freezing apartment in Beijing, sort of dreaming of being able to hear crickets. It's not something that I can record, certainly can in the summer here though. You're obviously in South Africa at the moment, probably in the middle of the summer and enjoying much better weather. But thank you very much for your time. It's been great to talk to you again and catch up.
Thanks a lot. I'm happy to hopefully contribute something, and good luck to all the students.